Georgia, 1.5-point favorite. The 2 seed against Notre Dame. Over under in this game, 44.5. Again, all our lines are presented by our partners at BetMGM. I think we have to start the conversation with the quarterback spot. The Georgia situation is the most interesting thing, I think, to me. Gunner Stockton, we haven't seen a ton of him. I was at the SEC championship. It feels like that is going to decide this game in a lot of ways. And I think I want to start the conversation here. Watching that game, it felt like to me, Texas was totally unprepared for the quarterback run game. Didn't seem to recognize that Georgia was not letting Gunner Stockton do anything. They was throwing a lot of hitches, a lot of easy stuff. They're trying to block the receivers up and then run quarterback draw on like 3rd and 6 every single time. They looked kind of unprepared for it, more than you would. It looked like Texas was trying to stay honest, and Georgia had no interest in trying to let Gunner Stockton do anything or trust him to do anything. The question now is, you got 2 weeks since then. Notre Dame's had a week to prepare. One, does Georgia trust Gunner Stockton more? You hear all these things. He's been in the program 3 years. You know, he's had this coaching staff likes him. They haven't had a lot of turnover. But Notre Dame has had a chance to prepare, and Georgia's had 2 weeks to kind of develop a game plan that suits him. Chris, let's start there, I think, and then I want to get Damien's thoughts on some of the dynamics here. How much do you think that the game planning on both sides of this will be different than the last time that we saw Gunner Stockton pushed into action, basically at halftime of the SEC championship?
Well, first off, I think this game is going to be incredibly ugly. I think this might set the sport back a bit. I do not think we're going to get explosive plays. I do not think we're going to have a lot of great throws. I think it's going to be kind of ugly because we now have 2 quarterbacks who are kind of run first anyway. At least it is with Riley Leonard, guys who they're probably better running than throwing. Well, first off, as of recording, Kirby Smart has not said that Carson Beck is out. He has only said that Carson Beck is in Jacksonville, like getting some experimental stuff looked at. That's not a good sign. That's not a good, if you're a pitcher, if you're a quarterback, if you're anybody, and you're in Jacksonville getting something looked at, it's probably not a sign that you're playing. So we're going.
Do we know if is it a situation where he may be having that amputated and a Georgia fan will be donating their arm? Is that happening?
I don't know I don't know if he's going to come out with a Winter Soldier arm on or something like that.
That sounds experimental to me. I mean, I don't think we can rule that out for sure.
Kirby Smart last week on College Game Day was asked directly about this and wouldn't say it, but I think we can all
wait, hang on. Kirby Smart was asked about injuries on a national platform, and he was dodgy with the details. Wow. I feel like my faith did not sound I feel like everything I've known has been shaken, Chris. That's going to be interesting. I think I want to take this discussion onto the golf course, Damien, which it's not Augusta National. So in a past life, I played a lot of golf. Life happens. You get jobs and kids and all that stuff. I don't get to play as much as I do. But I'm at the point now where when I do get to play, I usually play really, really well because I don't have a lot of confidence. I'm not trying weird stuff. I just have to lean on muscle memory. And I usually play pretty well. You get 70 yards and in where there's a lot of touch. I don't usually do well.
Are you just bragging about how good of a golfer you are?
Yeah,
yes.
Where are we going?
Yes, I am.
Where are we going?
No, my point is, what happens inevitably every time is you start stroking some drives, you start playing really well, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to lean into this one. And you get a little over your skis, and you make the worst swing of your day when you start feeling like you got this. And I do wonder if there's a dynamic that's possible there with Gunner Stockton of like, you get thrown in at halftime of that game, and you're like, this is an insane situation that I've been put in. I just got to do what they say. I'm not going to try to do too much. Oh, you want to hitch? Well, I don't care if that receiver's running wide open. I'm going to throw the hitch because that's what we're doing. We're going to play within ourselves. And I do wonder maybe, like you said, you have 2 weeks to sit there and stare at, a drive. You start to think about it. I do wonder about that. It's going to be interesting. Like, that's a really fascinating situation. Now, I do think, not to get ahead of our picks, I do think Georgia loses this game. Here's the issue with this, and this is where we get into some of the schedule conversation, is I agree with you, Notre Dame is one of the best defenses in the country. But in this playoff, where do they rank? Because Ohio State and Texas, clearly better, I think, than Notre Dame. Penn State, debatable. I would vote yes. You could debate that, I think, either way. When you talk about Georgia, the numbers are not there. They've been suspect at times, but some of that is schedule related. Like Notre Dame has not played the toughest schedule. What does that look like? I don't really know. And so I agree with you that Notre Dame has a really good defense, but in the playoff, if you're thinking about the 8 teams that are left, kind of average. Like it's kind of an average defense because you're only talking about 8 teams.
I mean, I think I'd bunch those groups together. I mean, Notre Dame's defense did to Indiana what Ohio State did to Indiana. Like if you want to compare, there was that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's true. But I think it is going to be really interesting. I think the Riley Mills thing is a huge deal. And if you can get to Georgia's secondary, you can make some plays. But the issue with that is that Notre Dame doesn't have the receivers or even the Michael Meyer factor in there that can make you plays. It is kind of on Riley Leonard's shoulders to make some plays. And whether or not the secondary is vulnerable or not, can you block it enough to be able to get and throw balls down the field is a good question. So again, I'm with you, Chris. We'll get to picks here in a second. Like I said, I do think this will be ugly.
Do we think there's a chance Georgia fans have kind of taken over the Superdome here in the Sugar Bowl? Like it's going to be a heavy Georgia crowd. They did have the bye. They could have bought up a bunch of tickets. It's not that far. But also they didn't sell out the SEC championship game really either. I don't know. Like the quarterfinals is that weird spot where like we don't know what the ticket situation is going to be.
Well, I don't know a lot about the religious leanings of the Louisianan people, but I do know that the NFL team does have a fleur-de-lis as their logo. Are there going to be any Catholics in Louisiana that like? Because Notre Dame fans are a little bit like BYU fans, and that like they don't travel as much as they're just everywhere. I don't know if that's a thing. I'm
we
not
met
sure what the buying is going to be.
We met him in New York City, the college capital of the world.
Yes, we did.
So Ubben, you're actually higher on Riley Leonard than I am.